And today we're going to be working on this 2001 Chevy Impala LS equipped with a 3.8-liter engine. I'll be replacing the idle air control valve, which some people refer to it by its initials, IACV. First, I'll explain to you what the idle air control valve does and what are the symptoms of a car that may need to have that valve replaced. And I'll also show you the location of where that valve is located on this engine. Then I'll show you the actual replacement of the valve and also compare the old valve right next to a new one so you can get an idea of what the brand new one looks versus one that may need replacement. Hi guys, welcome back. I am Alex, and on this channel I have repair car videos as well as review videos for cool car products for car enthusiasts like yourself. So if those are the kind of videos you like, make sure you subscribe by hitting the button down below to see more videos like this. Well, let's quickly talk about what the idle air control valve does. The engine idle is normally going to be regulated by this little unit. This unit opens and closes to allow some amount of air to enter the engine, and you have a nice smooth idle. Now, if you have a rough idle or issues with idle, sometimes it's as easy as replacing the idle air control valve. Also, if this valve is sticking or is now contaminated, this can also lead to issues when driving normally because now the engine is getting an unusual amount of air that it should not be getting because the valve is not operating correctly. So this can affect both the idle and it can also affect how the engine runs normally when driving around. Sometimes it will set a code, a DTC on the system. Sometimes there will be no check engine light, and the only way to know if it went bad is to pull it out and inspect it. But the good thing about this part is that it's fairly inexpensive, so some technicians actually even replace this part as part of a normal tune-up after the car has many miles on it. I think it just makes sense to swap it out. And even though this is a Chevy Impala engine, the 3800 engine was actually found in many other GM products, including Buick vehicles. So the process that I'm going to show you today is going to be very similar, if not identical, on other cars that use the 3800 3.8-liter engine. But where is the valve located? Well, we're looking actually right now at the throttle body, and you can see that it's mounted directly to it. But now let me show you how I replace that part. Now I do want to remind you that I place links in the description down below to the part and any other tools that you'll see me use in this video in case you want to look at it further or acquire a set for yourself. And the first step is going to be to disconnect the battery. Now some car technicians will not disconnect the battery when swapping out something as simple as the air control valve, but disconnecting the battery has the benefit not only of being able to work on a vehicle that has no power, but also it's going to erase any potential engine codes or check engine lights that I might have set because of that valve. And after I replace the valve or the sensor, reconnecting the battery allows the car to relearn that part all over again. And I'll start by carefully disconnecting the connector by lifting on the tab very gently and pulling straight back. Then using a T20 driver, I'm going to remove both of these screws. Now I'm being very careful because I don't want to drop a screw. You know, once you drop a screw, you'll never find it again. Using a driver with a magnetic tip or placing a magnet right below the screw will also help to prevent losing any screws that may fall out. And once both of the screws are removed, I can carefully pull out the idle control valve and the O-ring that goes with it. And now that we have both idle control valves side by side, here we have the old one and here we have the new one, let's talk about how this thing works. Inside of here, there is a mechanism that retracts this thing towards the inside or can bring it out towards the outside. This is basically a plug, which we call a pintle, and this will close a hole or open a hole a certain amount of time. So depending on how far the plunger is, we can control the amount of air that goes into the engine, and that's how the car is able to control the idle, by controlling the amount of air that pintle allows. Now notice that the new part, this pintle is a little bit lower, and that is because right now this is on the retracted position. Once it gets power, it will come out and the computer will control how far it extends. Now what's interesting too is that some service manuals will actually tell you to check the length of that pintle not to exceed a length of approximately 28 millimeters. What would happen if this is extended too far out? When we go mount inside of the vehicle, we're gonna potentially crush that and damage the part in the process. Now you can see that that 28mm number being called out by the service manual, you can see it on here on this part that we just removed from the vehicle. Looks like it was fully bottomed out at 28, so that makes sense. And we can see that on most brand new parts, we are not going to have that issue because most are going to arrive already preset at a lower height. For example, this one's roughly about 22mm, so we won't even have to do anything to install them. They are ready as long as we are under that number. But just for giggles, I do want to show you that if I press hard on this, we can get this plunger to retract, and if I pull on it, we can make this plunger come out. Now this is something that I'm just demonstrating here so you guys can see that we would not want to do this to the idle control valve because we might potentially damage it if we start playing with this thing. But I do want to show you what it will look like if this was too long. If this exceeded that number, for example, we can see that this is roughly about 32, 33. This is way longer than it should be. Let me show you on the car what this will do when mounting it and why it can damage the idle control valve if we try to mount this when this thing is extended that far out. And here's an idle control valve with the pintle fully extended past the specification. And as you can see, if I try to mount this, the pintle prevents me from fully bottom this out. So when I go to put screws in here, I am effectively going to crush the part as I tighten down the screws, damaging it permanently. Here's the part again with the pintle below the maximum specification, and you can see that I'm able to insert it and fully bottom that out. And if I put screws on either one of the sides, nothing's gonna get crushed. This is gonna work perfectly. The other thing you'll notice is that I make sure that the O-ring came out, and I'm gonna make sure that the new one is in place when I go install the brand new idle control valve. And installing the brand new idle air control valve is the reverse of the removal. You'll notice that I have cleaned this area really good before installing the new part. Now also notice that some car technicians will actually lube up this O-ring, typically using brand new engine oil to make sure it kind of sits in perfectly. Then I'm gonna push the part in, it fully bottoms out, and now I can reinstall both of the T20 screws. I'm being very careful not to drop the screws because if I drop these things in the engine bay, I'm probably never gonna find it again. So using a driver with a magnetic tip or placing a magnet right below where the screws are being located will help to catch any of them that might try to get away from me. You'll also notice that I'm being careful not to over torque these screws as I am just driving them into aluminum. So I'm just using the German spec of good and tight. And finally, I reinstall the connector, making sure it fully bottoms out and locks in place. And now that the idle air control valve has been replaced, all I gotta do is reconnect the battery and take this bad boy out for a test drive. If you guys have any other questions regarding this, please put that in the comments down below. And remember, I also put a link to the part and any tools that you saw me use in the video in the description also. If you guys found any part of this video helpful, hit the thumbs up button to support the channel, and stay tuned as I have a lot more maintenance videos for the Impala coming up. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.